Winter Postcard Exchange. So Sue, yes, there you are. Can't hear you.
Trying to figure out how to share my screen. How about share screen?
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, this is actually not something I'm working on. It's something I did the first year I retired, and it's called a Jesse tree. And when I retired from doing publications at St. Philip's, it changed my relationship with Christmas completely, because I was done with Christmas. I was over Christmas by mid-December. I had to start printing, because we printed like 1,200 bulletins for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. So I was working on January. Nobody of my colleagues wanted to think about January. So anyway, Christmas was not a big deal for me. But the first year I retired, I happened to discover this concept called the Jesse tree, and it's been around since medieval times. And it's basically a survey of biblical history. It's the human's relationship with God. And most of it, up until the last few days, is actually the shared heritage of Judaism and Christianity. So it starts at, Jesse was the father of King David. So that's why it's called a Jesse tree. It starts at the bottom left with, and my idea was going to be to do things really simply and just kind of iconic images that you could do out of your head, until I got to day 3. So this is the creation. This is Adam and Eve. Day 3 was Noah's Ark. I was like, I don't know how to draw an ark. So then I started using Google image and looking up how to, these various things I had to draw. And of course, it got more and more elaborate as I went along. And I won't go through, I don't know what time it is. I won't go through the whole thing, but this is Abraham. This is Isaac. This is Jacob, the stairway to heaven. You can't really see, but the stars are actually punched out, and there's colored paper behind it. And then it comes over here to the right, and it's Joseph's coat, Moses, and so on. And then this is the prophecy, a branch will come from the root of Jesse. And then here's David, Solomon. And then I took this picture last year on the 24th in the morning, because there's still 2 missing, the manger, which you put up on Christmas Eve, and the Cairo symbol that you put up on Christmas Day. And the day after Christmas, I was like, I don't have anything to draw today. So there's Advent can be different lengths depending on what day of the week Christmas falls, because it starts 4 Sundays before Christmas. Like this year, it's just about as long as it can be, because Christmas is on Saturday. And so there's a bunch of extra ones you do when it's a long year. And so I went back and did all the extra ones. And then I went back and I redid this. The verse for this one is inscribe it on your heart. And I thought it would be fun to do a loteria, a heart. And instead of a arrow through the heart, a quill, a writing quill. And so I did that. It's hanging behind it. And then this one is Jericho, and the Joshua's spies were sheltered by a woman, and she said, when you take over the city, would you protect my family? So they said, well, just put a red cord out the window and we'll know which house is yours. And so when I was drawing it, I got really into drawing the knot. And so when I looked at the finished thing, it looks like a fire hose. So I redid it and made it a more in scale drawing. So anyway, this is where it starts getting Christian. This is John the Baptist, and then this is the Annunciation. These tools represent Joseph, and then the lily represents Mary. So that's, I wanted to share it because I've been hanging up one per day. I've got about 12 up right now. So it's just a fun thing to remember.
That's wonderful. How big are the drawings, Sue?
They're 3.5 by 3.5.
Okay, wow, beautiful. I've never seen anything like that.
The drawings I'm doing right now, the COVID drawings, happen to be 2.5 by 3.5 because I had all the extra. I had a 4 by 6 Aquabee sketch or multimedia paper sketchbook, and I was cutting it down to make the 3.5. So I had all these 2.5s left over. So that's why I started doing the COVID drawings on 2.5 by 3.5. And now, of course, I'm cutting paper to make the 2.5s. So anyway.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing. That's really lovely. Okay, would you like to talk about the postcard exchange?
There's really nothing to say. We've got, I think 16 participants, which is a little less than last year, but people are a lot busier than last year. And if you think you have signed up and you didn't hear from me, then send me an email and I'll figure out whether I missed you or did it before you got it in or whatever. And
Okay.
I'll try and solve it.
Okay. Sounds good. I signed up. I already got my people, so that's great. Thank you, Sue, for doing this again. Okay, let's move on. I wanted to, let's see, can you spotlight me real quick? Let's see. Okay. So I just wanted to announce that Cave Paper is open during the 4th Avenue Street Fair this weekend, and stop by and say hi to Zoe if you haven't seen her. Her place is right next to the Antigone parking lot and it will be open. So I don't know if you're venturing down there, but you could stop and say hi. Next, I would like to spotlight a new member of PaperWorks, and her name is Jenny Sweosh, and she's going to show us her work and tell us a little bit about herself. She just moved here a few months ago. So welcome, Jenny. And you showed us your work a couple months ago at our pre-meeting, and I think we need to share this with everybody. So take it away.
Okay, let me see if I can share my screen.
First of all, people are wondering what's behind you. I know that. They're asking about that.
Okay, so this is basically just one of my pieces. I saved it as my background. Ironically, it just so happened to fit my head too, so it looked like I was wearing the hat. But I work with paper in a way of, I approach paper as painting with it rather than collaging or making a book. I have made books and things, but I tend to work large. Obviously, the piece behind me is large. It's 33 by 45 inches. So it's almost to scale of a real life portrait of a little girl. If I can get my share screen, so that's what the piece is behind me. It's actually a portrait of my niece, and I just like playing with different periods of time, and we made a hat for her out of cellophane, and so she put it on her head, and so then I could take that and just follow the contours for shadowing and such. So everything is basically different size dots. I have a mechanical hole puncher that does just little dots, and then I have various other types of die cuts that will make larger and larger dots that I can work with.
Okay. Are you going to share your screen?
Yes, share screen, and let me see if I can get to. There we go. So did that work?
Yes, it worked.
Okay, so my background, I have degrees in fine art, but and graphic design. So for most of my life, I've worked as a graphic designer, doing technical illustrations for various clients. I worked at Southwestern Medical Center doing technical illustrations for medical doctors and such. So when I would work in the fine art realm, I would always take the pens, the mechanical pens, and work with them as a way to draw. And it's kind of fussy working with mechanical pens because, again, the idea of, you're working in ink and it's hard to make a mistake, and to cover it up and such. So you have to know what you're doing. But I actually find it to be because I've worked with it for so long, that you can just start with a blank piece of paper and just start drawing and see what comes up. And I don't find it as constricting as some people might. When trying to get to color, and this is where, so that's that one. I found that the best way to get to color was to work with dots. I've worked with pastels and paints, but I tend to be quite sloppy when I'm working with them. Dust goes everywhere, and I wanted something that I could control the color more precisely when I was working with ink. So I found that painting with paper and working with dots was a nice balance to work against the meticulousness of the ink. And I usually like working with portraits of people. Most of what I have here is, you'll see my nieces in various stages. They're when I started drawing them, they were 3 and 5 years old, and now one's in college and the other one's is in the middle of high school. So I like the idea of combining working with the pen and ink with the painting with the paper. And sometimes I like to experiment with the paper and use it as the background, as well as just different ways of manipulating the paper with, in this case, using it as a hat, a fur hat, and working with rolling the paper into little cones to mimic fur, and then sticking that and collaging that down.
Wow. So Jenny, is each one of those dots, each one of those dots is cut out individually? The dots are cut and then pasted individually, glued individually.
Yes.
Wow.
It doesn't take that long. I mean, it is kind of meticulous, but it doesn't take me that long. This piece took me 2.5 weeks, and most of that was because I was having to twirl the paper for the hat.
Wow.
I've gotten pretty fast with the dots. So when I lay them down, I then, to make sure that they stay, I coat it with either a clear matte, Liquitex clear matte gel, or if I want it to be a little shinier, I'll do a gloss gel.
Wow, amazing.
And sometimes I'll just work with a single color. This was just to having fun with a single tone of red and different reds.
Wow.
And here's what this was, just a self-promotional piece that I did for myself, just to see if I could do it with graphic design. The pieces tend to look sometimes a little bit more graphic than painterly.
Beautiful. My goodness.
And then just
Oh.
experimenting with different cuts of paper as well.
Wow.
And here's with a clear gel gloss on her little dress.
Beautiful.
And one day they were sitting out in the backyard, and so I thought of Morissette's little girl in a blue chair, and so I asked my niece to kind of sit in a kind of a slouchy way, the same way, and so then that's how I got the inspiration for this piece.
May we
Uh-huh.
ask questions as you go along?
Sure.
Yes.
So on the previous one, if you could go back one sec. It looks like the dress is very textured. How did you accomplish that?
It's still just the dots, just put into position, and then it's a gloss gel on top to affix it rather than a matte gel.
So
Oh, Jenny, maybe
the
if
white
you,
is achieved.
I'm sorry?
Jenny, maybe if you zoomed in a little bit on your, if you can zoom in on your picture, it might be a little easier for,
Yeah, so you can see it's just little dots. Oh, if I can,
So the red almost looked as if it was white dots and maybe some gouache over it, but I think you're telling me it's both red and white dots on the red blouse.
Oh, on the red blouse, no, on the red part, well, on the collar there's white, but on the red, it's just red dots.
And then the white is accomplished with gouache or something?
No, it's still
Oh, the
just
paper, maybe the paper behind it.
It's just I think because of the gloss varnish or the gloss matte or the gloss gel that's on top that's adhering it to the paper.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What general size are these?
These are all like 40. I like working with Reeves BFK paper, so it comes in sheets of 44 by 30.
Quite large.
Yes, yes. I tend to work pretty big. And so then on this one, there's just a bit of, so it's just colored dots, and then sometimes I will cut out things and for the background, and sometimes I'll use actual this background over here to set it in a garden is actually just wrapping paper, Japanese wrapping paper. Let's see if I can get. And so this is another, I revisited the earlier picture that I had done several years before, just working with ink. And in this version, just working with paper to recreate the landscape and such. And so mostly I work with dots, but experimenting with just working with different cuts of paper, different shapes put down.
Jenny, can I ask a question?
Sure.
How do you adhere, what are you adhering all those dots with?
When I first adhere to the paper, I use a double-sided tape.
Oh,
So I'll draw and then I'll draw out the areas, and then I'll just have tape down where I'm putting down small dots. And then for large areas where I know that I have a big piece of paper, I can just use acrylic medium and just adhere it to the paper that way.
That's very interesting. A lot of gluing.
A lot of gluing.
How do you pick up the dots?
Tweezers.
You don't lick your finger and then
No, I need a tweezer because there's just a particular spot I want a dot to go into. So I work with so here's so I'll sit some days and just do dots, little dots. And these are my, I consider it like paint. So these are my colors. So when I have a particular piece in mind, I'll start out with the idea of what colors I want. And I'll sit and watch TV for a little while while I'm cutting dots.
Wow.
Jenny, do you use different weight paper for your dots, or are you mostly searching for color at any weight?
Mostly color at any weight. Sometimes I'll use pattern papers, and then it's just the weight that the pattern paper is. I usually try not to work with a paper that's too heavy because it becomes too hard to cut a shape out of.
Thank you.
So usually I'll use nothing over like 65 pounds for the dots or for color. And then sometimes larger pieces, just cutting out larger shapes. So this is just a cutout in a large shape.
I like how it's very graphic and that the dots are not covering the whole piece. It's just part of the design. I think it's beautiful that way.
And so just playing with different ways of cutting paper. So I also have a Cameo, a paper cutter, so that I can work with Illustrator and draw things in Illustrator and then transfer it into the Cameo, and the Cameo will do the cutting for me for like the vines or the outer border of my of the window here. And then sometimes I'll just experiment with free cutting paper. So here it's just a free cut, just with a pair of scissors, doing this by scissors. And I also have a printer that I use to help me with large pieces, an architect printer plotter, so it can handle large pieces of paper. And so this background is printed on the printer, and I just leave the areas that I'm going to work blank by masking. And when I get the piece off the printer, then I can just start drawing and then cutting paper. And so it's a mixture of just printing, cut papers, the dots, and drawing.
Jenny, I'm a little confused about what comes off of the printer. Can you describe that with this example?
Yeah, so what comes off of the printer for me is simply just this background. The background is actually just printed.
So you've masked the hat, the face, and the blouse?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And then sometimes just working with, so like in this one, the trellis is actually cut paper. So what I would do is I would draw and get the face done first. And then I would, when I'm ready to glue down the trellis and such, figure out what areas of the paper I need to cut out, and then get it adhered down to the final paper. All right.
Beautiful work,
Thank you.
as Jenny. Yeah.
Thank you.
So
So some of it is just a dot, and then working with the paper as large shapes and cutting out the paper.
so where do you show your work, Jenny?
Right now, I'm not in the gallery because I just moved here. So right now I'm looking for gallery representation and just entering shows as I can and such. Just trying to figure out the landscape, as it were.
And where did you move here from, Jenny?
I moved from South Carolina, and then before that, I was living in New Zealand for 4 years. I was working on my PhD in design.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And so sometimes just different pieces, just playing with the paper. So this was a patterned paper that had these white dots on the pink. And then these larger dots are dots that I cut out, and then did kind of a banded mass print with. And then these are just the smaller dots. And then here is just cut paper that I found that worked very nicely for her shoes. So I'm always looking for different kinds of paper, and I don't know when we'll use a particular piece of paper on an artwork. It's just at some point I know I'll use the paper. And this is one where it's actually just mostly larger dots, or not even dots. The largest circles here are 4 inches in diameter, going all the way down to a 1/4 inch. And then this one was more of my more recent work, where there is some printing in the back. And then more of the experimentation here was actually working with larger cuts of paper and just cutting out the plants as leaves and such. And then just leaving her dress in the smaller dot.
Beautiful. Love the colors.
Yeah, and the way I like to play with paper is just to look at it, if I'm cutting it out, is just to find shapes, and then what shape and what color that shape is going to be. So to me it's like painting with paper.
Beautiful.
And then just working with, sometimes I find a paper that I just like the pattern of, so using it as a wallpaper to contrast with the dots and with the drawn ink. And then this is one that got into a competition online.
Beautiful.
And these are my latest works. I'm actually Spectrum art book. They do they do a particular type of art. They showcase the year's best in fantasy and science fiction. And so I just was very interested. They have some lovely pieces of work in there. And so I'm doing a series of my theme for this competition is the Shield Maiden. And so I'm just doing several pieces based off of Norse mythology and the Shield Maiden, and applying for the competition, which it opens up in January. So a series of 5 pieces. Here's the first piece that I did, and then here's the second piece I did for that competition. And so it's a mixture of the smaller dots of printing, drawing, and then again, cutting out paper.
Wow. Jenny, we're going to have to wrap it up, but your work is amazing. People in the comments are saying it's wonderful. Any other comments for Jenny and her work?
Terribly, terribly impressed, Jenny. Just absolutely lovely work. And you have the patience of a saint.
Yes, you do. That's amazing. So
they don't take that long, really. I mean, I know it looks like they do, but I think because I've gotten so familiar with the processes that I've developed and stuff, most pieces don't take me more than a week.
Do you have a studio that is available for visits, or are you working in a private space?
Well, I am working in private space. I work in my house, but I do have, sometimes I have clients come over and they'll rummage through pieces of art and stuff. I rummage with them, so yeah.
Rebecca is asking, what was your thesis for your PhD about?
Oh, my PhD research was on stylometry, the study of style, and how to measure a style, an artist's style. And it was to develop a style grammar that could be used to help artists, very similar to the idea of Word has a grammar checker in it, was to develop an application that could be used with Illustrator to help with style grammar and drawing.
Wow, very impressive. I'd love to talk more with you about that.
Well, thank you for sharing, Jenny, and another time, and hopefully when we meet in person, we'll be able to talk and see you and talk to you more in person. So thank you. And we're glad you're a member of PaperWorks.
Well,
thank you.
It's wonderful
great.
to be here.
Great. So, okay, well, we're getting close to the 11 o'clock hour. And I was just going to say, if anybody has one real quick thing that they want to share, anybody, before we start our meeting?
Bobby,
Yes. Who is
there's
this?
a new book out that people might be interested in
Okay.
called Fragmentation and Repair. So I'm holding it up. Donna Watson, who taught for us 2 years ago, is included in it, but it comes, it's done by Batsford out of England, but it's really got some interesting techniques on stitching, burning, tearing, reconstructing. So people might want to look for it. It can be ordered through Amazon.
And the name of the book again?
Fragmentation and Repair. I'll put it in the chat.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Donna lives on your island up in Washington, right?
She does. I got together with her last week. She's doing some wonderful things and then had a small party at her house.
Great. Great.
So anyway, thank you.
And, oh, okay, I see Diane. Anybody else have anything to say? Okay, well, I am going to turn the meeting over then to Terry Enfield, who's going to introduce our speaker. Roxanne, I just want to say,